Today we're going to learn about a tool that's been around for 2,000 years, and it's been used for navigation for the last 1,000 years. That tool is the magnetic compass. Coming up. Hi, I'm John with Let's Go Now Adventures. And whether you're into tent camping or RV camping, we create videos to help you have a better camping experience. Today we're going to add the next tool to our land navigation toolkit. It's the magnetic compass. The compass is the glue that ties together all of the skills we've learned so far in this course. Add the skill and knowledge of how to use a compass with the other skills we've learned in this course, like directional awareness, using landmarks, features, time and distance, building a mental map, previewing and planning our adventures by combining street maps, Google Earth, and topographic maps, and creating our own accurate and customized topographic maps with Caltopo. Because the Earth has a molten or liquid core and is spinning relatively quickly, the Earth has a magnetic field. A properly magnetized needle that's allowed to spin freely will align itself with the lines of magnetic polarization. The needle will point in a northerly direction to a point called magnetic north. Magnetic north and the North Pole, true north, are two different places. True north is where all of the longitudinal lines converge, and magnetic north is a point currently in the middle of the Arctic Ocean where the magnetic lines converge. The difference between true north and magnetic north is called magnetic declination. For me, where I am now, north is 11 degrees west of magnetic north. That amount of declination changes depending on where you are in the world, and it changes over time. Good thing for our purposes, it's not moving so fast that we can't use magnetic north for land navigation. I came across a YouTube video by the Columbia River Orienteering Club that does an awesome job of explaining magnetic declination. I've included a link to the video in the description below. I've also included a link to NOAA's website so you can find out your current declination, or more importantly, the declination of where you're going to be traveling. You know, they're different. So here are some of the different tools that I use for land navigation. But you know, if it really came right down to it and I could only use one of them, then the one would be the base plate compass. Base plate compass is the most useful to me because of the following things. It can be used in the planning phase of your trip as well as in the field. It's lightweight, and when you're hiking, you count ounces and not pounds. And it's the most useful type of compass when it's paired with a good topo map. So let's take a look at the different parts of the base plate compass. First, we have the base plate, then the compass housing. We have the magnetic needle, which floats around inside the compass housing. We have the direction of travel arrow. We have an index mark, rulers and scales that are kind of right into the base plate. We have orienting lines in the orienting arrow. The reason the orienting arrow is so important is most of the time when you're lining up your compass, you're going to be putting your magnetic needle, the red magnetic part of the magnetic needle, right inside of the outline of that orienting arrow. Now, many call this putting red in the shed. So that means your orienting arrow and your magnetic needle are lined up in the same direction. So the two compasses you're looking at right now, both of them can be adjusted for declination, but I've only got one of them adjusted right now. Can you tell which one? That's right. The way to tell is if your orienting arrow is not running parallel with your orienting lines. Now, let's say you have a compass that you cannot adjust for declination. Well, one really good idea is just take a marker and draw on the top of the compass housing the line that indicates your magnetic declination for where you are. Use the straight edge and just put that on. Now what you'll be doing, instead of lining your red magnetic needle up with the orienting arrow or putting red in the shed, now you're going to be putting the red part of your needle, orienting it to that line that you put on top of the compass housing. One thing you must understand is that every time you change locations by more than just 20 or 30 miles, you really have to readjust your compass to reset your declination. All right, let's take a look at our map. This is a map of the same area we were looking at last time when we were working with the Caltopo map, but here is a Forest Service map that I picked up at my map store. And the reason is it's a little bit bigger. It's going to be easier for video purposes, so you can kind of see what I'm doing. So right here, just to orient you, is the hike we took to get up to the top of Bald Mountain. And then we talked last week about taking my lake hike, which basically follows the Notch Trail up to Meadow Lake, and then comes back through the Notch, and then heads back, wandering through different lakes. Well, when we're doing a little bit of route planning, then what we'd like to do is find out, okay, so here we are at our start point, and this is where we're going to end up for the first part of the day. What direction overall are we going to be heading? So what we're going to want to do is take our compass. Now, for this part, one of the things that can be very confusing for people is your magnetic needle doesn't matter. We're only using the compass right now as a protractor. So what we're going to do is we're going to line, let me do this. I've got my marker. I'm going to, just so you can see, we've got our starting point here, and we're going to camp. Let's build a little tent right there. So I'm going to draw a line that hopefully you can see that this is our overall direction of travel right there. So what you do, and you want to find out your overall direction of travel, is you line your compass edge up with that line with the direction of travel arrow pointing in the same direction you're going. So we're going to be hiking from a starting point to our campsite here. So then what you do is, now that you're lined up with the edge, you take your orienting lines and make them parallel to these lines that you can see on the compass, on the map. So you'll be looking at a close-up shot of this. Those lines are what's called grid north, and it's close enough to true north that for our purposes, we'll just go ahead and use them. So in the field, in reality, in practice, we'll call them the same thing. So we're going to line our orienting arrows up with these grid lines that are pointing north and south. So you can see right in here, I've got my orienting arrows parallel with the lines here. So all we need to do then is take a reading, and that tells me that we are going to be heading overall for the course of the day at 320 degrees. Let me write that in marker so you can, 320 degrees, in that we're heading that way. Now, one thing to be aware of is we are not going to hike along a 320-degree bearing from start to finish. There's mountains in the way, there's lakes in the way, and things like that. What works better is if you break your trip down into legs. So you'll have a short section right here, and then we'll follow generally another section right here, because in reality, we're going to be going around mountains, we're going to be going around lakes, and so we are not going to be walking in a straight 320-degree line. So I'm just using the marker to retrace different legs of our trip. So let's take a look at this first leg of our hike. So we're going to put our compass up there, and we are going to then look, we're going to line our orienting lines up and we're going to make them parallel to our grid lines on our map, and we'll take a look at what that is, and that looks like it's going to be 270 degrees. So our first leg, we're going to be heading 270 degrees. So we're going to be heading 270 degrees. So let's take a look at the next leg of our trip, which is running from here up to that lake. So we're going to put our compass against that line with our direction of travel arrow going the same direction we are. We'll line and make parallel our orienting lines with the grid lines on the map. And now we'll check and to see what our index marker reads. And it looks like it's 328 degrees. So for this part of the trip, we're going 328 degrees. And we're heading this way. So for the purposes of the video, you can do this for all of the legs, and then you can mark it off at each of these checkpoints. Now, one of the reasons this checkpoint or waypoint is so valuable is we know that when we get to that lake, we've been on the right path. We're double checking ourselves. So if we don't end up at that lake, then we'll do another skill that we'll be covering in just a moment. Hey, it's a beautiful day today. Today's a perfect day to come out here. I'm out in my park to do a little practice with our compass. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to figure out which way is north. So what you want to do is take your compass and line the index mark up with the letter N, north. That's going to be in the same direction as your direction of travel. Then what you'll do is hold it out. This is assuming that you've already calibrated for magnetic declination. You'll just put your magnetic needle right inside the orienting arrow. Some people call it red in the shed. Then note which direction your direction of travel arrow is pointing. That is north. So what we'll do now is we'll grab our map. We'll take our map, line the edge of the compass up with the edge of the map, and now turn our whole body so that we get to that red in the shed again. We get to our magnetic needle right inside of our orienting arrow. Now our map, which is typically the north end of the map, is pointing north. It's as close and as accurate as we're ever going to be in the field. So just take that and rotate that map until you've got red in the shed. Now your map is facing north. So one thing to be aware of is that metal definitely affects the accuracy of that magnetic needle. It can really throw it off. I'd like to use this example. I've got the compass laying on this mat, and you can see my pocket knife right next to it. Well, As I lift the pocket knife up, you can see that by removing that metal, all of a sudden the needle swings a completely different way. You can also see by me putting the tip of the knife in proximity to the compass that that needle follows the metal. Anytime you're trying to take an accurate reading, or you really need to know the direction that and guarantee that that needle is pointing to magnetic north, you really have to take extra care to make sure that there's no metal around. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take that same technique. Let's say, for example, we planned our hike and we know that the first leg of our hike, we're going to go for 1.5 miles at 165 degrees. So what we'll do is we'll turn our compass to 165. There we go. So now 165 is lined up with the index arrow. The direction of travel is also in that same direction. Now what we'll do is we'll turn our body until that magnetic needle, it's red in the shed. Now we know the first leg of our hike is we're going to be heading that way. So that is the first thing we're going to do. We're going to be going that way for 1.5 miles. Now what we want to do, especially if we're hoofing it off trail, is we'll probably want to check our bearing every once in a while, because there's a tendency to drift. You know, humans, we tend to have one leg that's stronger than the other. And you tend to drift to your stronger side. That's just one of the things, so that over time you kind of veer off to one side and the other without even thinking about it or without even knowing it. So what you want to do is periodically take out your compass, check again, and make sure that you're still heading in that direction, in our case, 165 degrees. Okay, the next skill we're going to work on is we're going to take a bearing. We'll find out what direction is a particular landmark. So, in my case, we've got right there a beautiful mountain, 11,200 feet. It's called Lone Peak. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take our our direction of travel arrow, and we're going to point that as best we can right at the mountain. Then what we'll do is we'll turn our compass so that our magnetic needle is in the orienting arrow, red in the shed. And then what we'll do, now that we see what that is, all you have to do is take a look, and I'm looking at about 137 degrees from here to Lone Peak. So one of the things you'll want to do is when you've got your direction like 137 degrees, if somebody says to you, hey, Lone Peak is 137 degrees from where you are. There's a cool hot spring there. You'll want to check it out. Well, you need to find out. You know what they told you. It's 137 degrees. So what we'll do is we'll set our compass index line to 137 degrees. Then what we can do is just turn. And what we don't want to do is turn our hands like this. What we do want to do is hold it out so that it's away from you, away from any metal that can affect the accuracy, and turn our whole body until we've got that needle right inside the orienting arrow. And now we know that if we go that way, that's the direction to fun. Okay, the next skill we're going to work on is, let's imagine that we're on this hike and we decided to go off trail for a little while and we're goofing around somewhere in here. Now, what we want to do is we want to find out if it would be quicker to go to the starting to hike back since we've gone off trail, whether to go to the starting Or would it be better to come over here and go to our ending? So we've got our start and our end. So we took off on day one. We went camping up here. We came back through the notch, and we've been off trail for about 3 hours, just goofing around at all these different lakes, exploring. But we lost track of where we are. We just know that we're by some lakes, except that there are probably 15 lakes right there. So where are we exactly, so we can make a decision about whether or not we're going to head back to the beginning of our hike or head for the end. So let's do this. So let's imagine that we're in the field and we take a reading, because we can see this mountain really well. Reed's Peak. It's a very pointed mountain. It's easy to get an accurate reading on. And we take a look at that, and it is 68 degrees. So what we'll do is we'll set our compass to 68 degrees. And we'll put 68 right against our index mark. And then what we're going to do now is take our straight edge of our compass and put it right on Reed's Peak. And what we'll do is we'll just bring that around until the orienting lines are parallel with and I'm going to draw a straight line. So I'm going to finish that line off with a marker so that you can see it. So from Reed's Peak, it's 68 degrees to Reed's Peak right here. So we are somewhere on that line. Well, so what we'll do is we'll take another reading. So we take a reading of this mountain right here, which is the farthest west peak of the two notch peaks. And we get that reading, and it is 314. So we'll set our compass to 314. Now what we'll do is we'll take the straight edge of our compass with the direction of arrow pointing in the direction of the peak that we're looking at. So now that our orienting lines are parallel with the grid lines on the map, and the tip of our base plate is right up against the mountain, we'll just draw a line, and I'll extend it out with a marker so that you can see it better. So where these two lines intersect is where we are. Now I've chosen two peaks that are at least 60 degrees apart. The reason for that is if they're too close to each other, you increase your chance for error. So by increasing that angle or taking measurements of two peaks that have a greater degree of difference, that increases our accuracy to know that we're right here. Let's say we want to even double check that a little bit further. So let's take a third reading. Way down here is Haystack Mountain. We'll take a reading of that, and that's going to be 220 degrees. We're at 220 degrees. The lines are parallel. We'll grab our pencil and draw a line. Now we'll extend that line. This third line should intersect very close to where the other two did. So you can see that it's almost exactly. So somewhere right in that little area where all three lines gather, that's where we are. The compass is another tool we use in land navigation. This video, combined with the first 3 videos in the series, are an introduction to land navigation. Now the key is to practice these skills when you don't need them, so you'll develop enough mastery for when you do. You can use them automatically with confidence. Hi, thank you for watching the video today. I really do hope you found some value in it. If you did, please give us a big thumbs up and hit the like button down below. It really does help. I'm John with Let's Go Now Adventures, and I'll see you on the next adventure.